Joe's the only one missing.
Okay, I started the recording.
Awesome. So, John, can you
Okay.
share the agenda?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay, that should be coming up.
Perfect. So, good evening, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. This is our, well, what's the top say? We have our,
I'm sorry, it's a special meeting, special agenda.
It's our special agenda for our Academy Building Community Center meeting tonight. I guess the first item is for our approval of minutes from our March 11th, 2024 meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review them? And go ahead, Joan.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Perfect. All right. We'll move on to the chair's comments. Our chair is not with us this evening. He's out of town. I don't have anything to share on my side, so I guess we'll move into public comment. Oh, Al.
I would like to just alert the committee to two key dates. The first, the Board of Selectmen will be touring the Academy building this Thursday at noon. There's no particular need for anybody to attend unless Dave, you and Joe have worked out attendance. I think one of you should be there, and Bill Stableford will be joining us. But otherwise, it's just a selectmen's tour of the building. No business will be conducted. The next key date is Wednesday, April the 3rd. And that is the date that there will be a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to receive the report from this building committee. That's at 7 p.m. on April the 3rd. And you are all certainly invited to attend that. My guess is the presentation will be made by Mark with some introductory comments from Joe, but I think we'll look to Colliers to probably carry most of the presentation. But you as committee members may feel that you would like to add any commentary based on the questions that come up either from the selectmen or from the public.
Hey, Al, can I ask a question? Or Dave, can I ask a question to Al? Do you need Colliers or Tom or Carrie at that walkthrough of Academy on Thursday? Would you like to have somebody there?
I don't know that it's necessary, Mark. I think we're just trying to refamiliarize the selectmen with the current state of the building. I don't know that we're really going to get into any kind of meaningful discussion about the kinds of details that the architect might provide. Look, I certainly wouldn't discourage Tom from coming if that's what you're asking me. I just don't think it's a mandatory attendance.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it would make it more beneficial for the board to have somebody there that's more intimately involved with the project, you know, that can speak to some of the concepts behind, you know, the scope in terms of the courtyard and the entry, and so
it absolutely it wouldn't hurt, Mark. It wouldn't hurt at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that point, and I see Tom's joining as well, but Jeannie had reached out to us earlier, to Tom and myself. I am available and was planning to attend on Thursday. Tom mentioned he is out of state. Apparently he's not available, but he said he was going to check with Brian to see if Brian may be available if necessary.
I think that would be excellent.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. And Al, I plan on attending at noon on Thursday myself, so I'll be there for Joe.
All righty. I don't think any formal remarks need to be made. I think the building speaks for itself.
There you go. Okay. Anything else, Al?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We will move into public comment. Jeannie, do we have any public comment?
We do. Felicia Smith from the Facilities Department is going to join us.
Okay.
Hi, all. Just wanted to let you know that I am here.
Okay.
And Peter and I are planning on attending the Thursday at noon as well, just from a facilities perspective.
No, that's great.
All right, do we have anybody else, Jeannie?
Alicia, I didn't get a debrief from my team. Did your meeting go appropriately or as you expected?
Yes, there are some concerns that Peter and I think wanted to bring to the board, just about, just about the systems as planned, especially the approach to go all electric, if geothermal is not involved. So we did want to bring that up, and I don't know, I don't think this is the appropriate time, but at some point, we do want to have that discussion because it will filter into, a significant financial considerations as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Jeannie, do we have anybody else?
Nobody else.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll move on to new business, our building committee review of the 3 options. So I guess at this point, John, we will start with option 1.
Okay. Not sure how well you can see this. Hopefully, try to enlarge this a little bit more.
Well enough.
Is that good
That's
enough?
actually
Okay.
good. Yeah.
All right. So, as I believe you all know, the request was to put together the 3 options for presentation to the upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting. And so this is option number 1, which per the title is the scope of the work to comply with the referendum construction budget. So the exercise here was to obtain a cost, let's scroll down to the bottom, that is equivalent to the referendum construction budget. Again, not the entire project budget, but the construction portion of that only, which is the $12,180,900 figure. So based on the discussion from the prior meeting, I amended some of the list up here above, incorporated some of the items that had been separated previously, adjusted that to reflect the removal of the markups from those previous line items, and have subsequently adjusted the markups here with those line items that are now reflected above that line on both the building construction, excuse me, and the site construction components. And then again, on the right are the line items of the various scope of work issues that are excluded from any of the costs on the left side. And these subtotals reflect both the building construction and then the site construction costs that, again, are not carried in the column on the left. So this incorporates, again, the markup to the line item cost above, the escalation, which is using 3% for 6 months, since this has been pushed out a couple more months, and that subtotal. This does include the design alternate, the deduct figure of the $544,200 for that design alternate.
Is that the entry, John?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Mark, that's the
You may
entry.
want to label that, revised entry alternate or something like that.
Sure.
Okay. So this is with the revised entry, not ground level.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
And again, that results in the equivalent cost for construction of $12,180,900, which equates to the original referendum construction budget.
Okay.
And John, this also includes the office fit outs for Beach and Rec and for Youth and Family Services.
Family Services, that is correct. This was
Okay.
amended to include those two components to match the referendum wording. And essentially, the basement level would most likely not be touched to any great degree. Some of those finish costs, which are listed here on that box to the right, would reflect various components that are not being addressed. But the two offices, those are intended to be incorporated into the scope of the work.
I may be getting ahead of myself, but I want to make sure we've at least got on the agenda, or we're thinking about, like, how do we articulate that clearly? Because the numbers are important, but they don't tell the whole picture. They don't tell the whole story. Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors here.
Yeah.
I think AJ, I agree that if we had some sort of imagery that depicted some of this, that would be helpful in the conversation. I don't know, Al, if you agree from a board perspective.
Yeah.
Visuals are always good.
Yeah, and I think the more
no
information
disrespect
we
to
can
these
give,
numbers, but visuals are immense help to both selectmen and the public.
Yep.
Yeah.
and maybe some bullet point overview that we had, that was the original, we had some bullet point overviews for each of the options would be good as well.
Yeah,
So that
because
we
I
know
thought,
what's in, what's out.
yeah, because Mark, I thought
That's
you
what we
guys
had.
were putting together like a PowerPoint presentation or something, right, with this?
Yeah, once we know, Dave, what we're presenting, we'll put together something that we'll have numbers, but we're going to simplify it to bullets and maybe some imagery from Tom's office to support each of the options.
That's perfect, I believe.
And just high level, so, obviously fit out of beach and rec offices on this option with things like wooden plastics, door frames, ceilings, floors, things like those excluded. At a high level, what do we get on the community center side? Is it occupiable, semi?
Yeah, I think, Joe, everything's occupiable.
Right.
It just won't be fit out for those full offices.
No, I mean, the
And
offices
some
for
work-
beach and rec and Madison Youth and Family Services are occupiable, but I'm saying high level from a narrative, what does the community portion look like?
Yeah, the non-committed spaces. Yeah, I mean, I unless I'm.
Is
we're
it fully,
still finishes? We're still there. Yeah, they'll still.
it's all in there, okay, it's just,
Yeah.
okay,
It's very basic,
empty, very basic and empty.
very basic and empty, but that's
Cleaned out,
because of the
definitions,
construction
repaint.
escalation.
New
Yep,
LED system.
understood, that's what I wanted to
So-
get at, it's basic and
yeah.
empty. But capable of being fit out at a later date.
Yep.
Correct.
I think that's a.
That was the goal for option number one, so that there is a way to move forward with 15.9 million. It's just not gonna look, I think, like anybody on this committee wants it to look. That's my thing, but we can talk through each of the areas, but these are the options that we are trying to build, the baseline, then, okay, everything all in, and then potentially the third option is what we're actually recommend, potentially. Right.
If I might add, the word empty is going to cause a lot of problems. I think it needs to be painted more clearly what empty means. I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
know how
no,
people are going to react.
Yep.
I think maybe more non-committed versus empty, if I'm interpreting out what you're saying.
I really question whether it can be used for programming though. If you have no doors, if you have no partitions between the toilets, can you really use that building in a practical sense? Or is it just a partially finished construction project with future potential?
No, I think if I'm understanding, John, you'd have all the walls that are currently there. They'd have new finishes, new MEP systems, new windows. The doors would be
Right.
there. You just wouldn't have them carved out into the beach and rec and youth and family services spaces, but they would still have 4 walls and a ceiling.
So when it says doors and frames under
And
building
doors.
construction excluded, that doesn't mean that there won't be doors and frames.
Yeah, if you notice, John, there are some costs being carried for doors and frames on the left side here.
Okay, so it's just
So,
partial.
yes, so these line items, the interior wall partitions, doors and frames, ceilings, flooring, painting, these are all in conjunction with those office spaces. So this is taking, some of the costs for those allocated items, line items, and incorporating that into, if you will, the base scope of the work.
So it
there
really
are-
says that the
I'm sorry.
the community programming piece of it is really what will be scant at best.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah, the public. So what is it? What does the public space look like? I think that's what we're trying to ask.
What
Does
do
the
the public
public-
spaces look like and what programming can and cannot take place? I think that's the key to describing
Right.
this. What is the programming that's going to be able to be taking place and which programming is not?
Yeah,
Correct.
that's a fair question, because right now what we're looking at, we don't even know if the gym is usable or not, right? As an example.
Right,
Correct.
well, we don't have any equipment or anything for the gym. And I think the gym's floor was one of the big ticket items that isn't being done.
Correct. The gym
So,
flooring is part of the excluded
The other
item
community
on the right.
spaces,
So I think we
Right.
definitely have to identify those items. So clearly the gym is not going to be usable without a floor.
Well, it currently has a floor, right?
yes,
Mhm.
So there wouldn't be a new floor. I don't know what the condition of the existing floor is. I've been in there a number of times. It feels like it's not bubbled and not a hazard, but maybe it has deteriorated over the last couple of years.
But Mark, if we're doing any sort of hazmat abatement, that may go. I don't remember what the flooring material was.
It could be, but I think Dave, we're only abating it if we're touching it. So if there's something underneath, there's nothing on the surface, right? But there could be a mastic or something underneath the gym flooring. But if that doesn't get touched, it stays encapsulated essentially. But I think that bulletin narrative would do better at painting the picture versus,
Because right now we're just looking at numbers, Mark, right?
Right.
And we just have kind of buckets, right? We have buckets of money and under different activities, right? But they're not broken down to know exactly what we're getting, what we're not.
yes.
So Mark, if you guys are putting together that slideshow, would you be able to put together that narrative of what the public space would look like and what programming may be able to go in this option 1?
Yeah, I think if I remember, if we go back to the imagery we had back when we had the concept and we had the dedicated youth and family services, the dedicated beach and rec, and then you had all just community space. We could continue to identify that community space, that it would have new finishes, new MEP systems, and it's the classroom just cleaned, right? And then with furniture being brought in, it could be used, as a meeting space. Or anything that could fit within the confines of the 4 walls.
So Mark, the expectation is we're gonna agree on these 3, hopefully, right? On these 3 options, and you're gonna take these options and expand on them and put them in a PowerPoint.
Yeah, we'll
And
put
then
it in a power.
back-
Yeah, Dave, we'll probably embed this because this is something that I think Joe likes. And we'll embed this into the PowerPoint, but we'll also have a slide that speaks up option 1, original referenda budget scope that's included. We'll have some imagery. I'll help Tom put together some graphical plans that shows what and what isn't going to be included, in this
Sure.
option, and that'll repeat itself for options 2 and option 3. We'll also
And-
have the image of the new entry. So the board, I don't know, Al, has the board seen the new entry? or the revised alternate entry?
I would assume not. I
Okay.
think, remember, we're also talking to the public at the same time, so I would,
Yeah, okay. So
uh,
we'll include
And-
the elevations of that. Sorry, Joan.
Right, and Austin has chimed in and said the gym floor is a tile flooring with missing pieces.
Oh,
Does
So
he know?
odds are
like
that's
a-
going to be removed.
Is it the VCT flooring? Does he know? When he
Should
says
we ask
tile,
him
is it?
to?
I'm guessing it's probably.
Yeah,
He put
yeah,
tile
but
in, it's in
It's a
quotes.
it's a VCT floor.
It is
And
okay.
it's in bad shape. It really needs to be abated or removed.
so there's no gym under option one.
But if you're not gonna use the gym, you could just shut the doors and call it good.
Yep, I think,
At
mean,
this point.
option one, I hate to say is what it is, but that's to hit the number, these are the things we have to do.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Joe, I'm not sure how much more time we want to spend on this option other
Yeah,
than getting a
that's-
breakdown,
yeah,
right?
I think we're good, yeah.
I think we're
Yeah.
good.
We've kind of reviewed this several times too, so I think we're about
Yep.
as narrow as we can get at this point.
I would
We don't
agree.
like it, but we're aligned.
Yep, agreed. So I guess, Joan, do we have to take a vote on this then as option one?
Unfortunately, there is no vote in our agenda, and a special agenda cannot be modified.
Oh,
So we're gonna do adjustments, and then what we can do a formal vote either at the next meeting or call in just a special meeting to do the vote, because special meetings cannot, the agendas can be modified.
Did we vote
Okay.
last meeting to do options 1, 2, and 3, or are you talking about voting to approve these?
We're voting, what I would love to do is vote for the numbers to be like, this is option number one, that is what it is. Option number two, does everybody agree? That's all in, it's the, it's the
Yep.
way over budget. And then the one that we really need to vote on is really option number three, which is what we're recommending. But we can do that vote at another time, even after the Board of Selectmen meeting, knowing that we are moving it forward. We can do a tally. We can do an informal vote now on option three once we, make sure that we're all in agreement with it, and then we move that forward. But it wouldn't be a formal vote.
I agree with what Joan is saying, but at the same time, I think if anybody present is having a problem with this option one, now's the time to speak up. Otherwise, it's reasonable to assume that there is a consensus, and then when a formal vote is held, that everybody will be in favor of it. There's no question in my mind that what you bring to the selectmen and to the public is much better brought when there's unanimity on the committee. A split vote is not nearly as effective as a unanimous vote. So when it's time to vote, I hope it's unanimous. If anybody's stumbling at this point in time, I think now's the time to speak up.
The only question I think we talked about it last time, but I just want to reconfirm the geothermal, that I thought that was part of the referendum, but we're excluding it anyway in
To
this.
hit the
Well-
budget number. that's
Just
what
to
we-
hit the budget number, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
To hit the budget number, yes, and also there's a lot of things that we're taking out of this, that, the theater is out of it, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle because we have to hit the number.
Yeah, then
Yep.
option 2 is to build it as spec'd out.
Oh, option 2 is the one that would include everything the referendum had.
I
Got
think
it.
so.
Right.
Correct.
Great.
okay. So do we have any more conversation on option one?
I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Is Ann still with us?
Sort of,
He is
yes,
back.
and I'm all
Okay.
set.
Thank you, Ann. Joan?
I'm all set with option one.
Okay, John?
Agreed.
Okay, so I think we've all agreed. We can move on to option two.
Okay, so as was referenced just a little while ago, option 2 is essentially all in. So this is everything on the referendum. You'll notice on the right, there are no costs associated with any excluded work. And everything is now delineated here on the column on the left. And cutting to the chase here at the bottom, we have a total number for the construction costs, a figure of $17,543,663.40. Note
John,
that this,
Is it safe to assume this is the referendum scope?
yes,
Right. So this is everything that was in the referendum
Yes.
scope, but in the dollars versus today. So the first option was the referendum dollars. This is the referendum scope.
Yep.
It
correct,
does
in
look like
today's,
this, John, it does look like this includes the add alternates though, right? New
Yeah,
ball
Mark,
field, new
Mark,
playground.
this includes items that we may have identified along the way. Like the ball
the
field,
ball field,
Okay.
the sanitary system wasn't in the original, correct?
Not the
These are
expanded.
things that have.
Yeah.
What's that, Mark?
not the expanded sanitary, no.
Right.
Right.
The budget, the referendum, I think carried a $65,000 line item for the sanitary scope of work.
So this is referenda scope plus a couple of things like expanded sanitary, ball fields, anything else?
Radio repeater.
Yeah, I think maybe some upgraded site improvements and patio
Okay.
work, Mark.
All right, so we'll have to identify those added scopes
Yes.
of work.
Is
Okay.
it safe to assume though that those were things that were uncovered over the course of the project? They're not necessarily things that the committee asked for that didn't need to be done. I'm trying to differentiate between those two.
That's a good way to look at it.
But I think it's a good idea to just flag what are the things that are different from what we knew at the time of the scope. So the MEP is significantly higher. The septic system is significantly higher. Those were not.
I agree.
Knowns at the time.
But the only reason we added them is because you need a new septic, right? None of us said this current one's fine, but we want this anyway, right? I just want to make that distinction.
I just don't want it confused that this was just all misses in the original estimates, that these are things that are changes from the original estimates based on having more and better information later on in the process.
But yeah, I think it's need to haves versus want to haves that
Exactly,
you want to
exactly.
carve out.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
the sanitary is a need to have, which drives the ball field and the playground. So those are sort of needs to have.
Actually,
I
no, the
just as an example, I
geothermal
don't
goes for
know
the,
that the radio repeater system is or is not a need. That's for facilities determined, but just as an example, is that a nice to have or is that a need? I think it would be important to have the nice to haves versus the wants and the need, the wants versus the needs. If there are any,
right, and
I don't know if any of these are wants. Maybe they're all needs.
so the geothermal actually drives the new ball field. It's not the sanitary system.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah.
the new playground is the sanitary system because it's
Sanitary.
going under it. It could, yeah. So I just want to make sure that we're understanding that piece of it. And the water line, I'm sorry, go ahead, Anne, I apologize.
Oh, I just want to say, so could we add a place for remarks on here that illustrates that a new ball field is required as a result of this function, that a new playground is required because of this function, remarks off to the side that would tie the individual components together.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, and we'll add that to the bulleted commentary when it comes to this option.
Perfect, yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
I would not expect this to have any wants on it from this committee, right? This should be the referendum plus any needs that came out of discovery work that was done, and that was it.
Mhm.
So are there any wants in here? I'm just looking down the list.
I don't know. I see something like upgrades. What was this? Academy Street design upgrades. Are those really upgrades? Were they part of the original design?
Those were part of the original design, but it wasn't specifically identified in the referendum. It was just part of the original concept.
Maybe we just reword that so it doesn't.
The word upgrade is what's catching you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be.
Explain empty.
I'm
Explain
trying not to be pedantic here, but it's.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point, though. I think when we like empty sounds bad, upgrade probably sounds bad because it just they're points that we have to try to explain, and that's where we're going to get caught up in something.
Yeah, and it's a legitimate thing. It was part of the design.
Yeah.
Does it need to be called out separately is the question, or does it roll up into just, building envelope related things?
Is the word modification acceptable instead of upgrades? Academy Street design modifications?
So that's the front, that's where
that
the
the-
current
is that
front of the building
landscaping?
is.
Is that landscaping or is that site?
No, that's building, correct, Tom?
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, if you said like Academy Street.
Is that the
Dot work.
base of windows on Academy Street side as well? Is that what that 108 was?
Yep.
All right, so that's part of the initial design, but it was so that remember the glass, you could see through the entire building on the first design that we got as a committee. And I think that's what they're trying to say, the Academy Street design change. We probably just design.
Is it
Or-
facade?
Academy Street redesign may be the easiest way to word that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's not in I don't think that's in number 3, so.
No, it is not.
Right.
Could you
And then-
also make the stage renovations, just take in gymnasium off? Based on our last discussion, we're going to decide later what that means.
Well, there's,
If you want.
but then there's a new stage and ramp. I think you need to differentiate or just say main stage renovations rather than in gymnasium.
I mean, it seems clear enough the way it is, but I'm
Mhm.
happy to. I agree in the fact that I think it needs to be differentiated so people don't get confused between the two.
Right.
Yeah, but that's making the assumption that the main performance stage will be in the gymnasium. I'm not there yet.
Well, it's the only stage. It's when the new stage, in the recital area is lowered to 1 foot above ground level, then that's not going to be a performance level stage.
I think we
That's what
agreed at the last meeting that we were going to allocate those funds for general stage renovations, and then we would have the discussion later about where it makes sense to use those. That was
But
my understanding.
I don't
of our
think-
last.
I
So,
don't
yeah,
know
that
if you
was-
want to get into this conversation right now.
This is referendum scope. So what did the referendum say? Where was the stage?
There were 2 stages listed. And it was a 125 seat theater, and the picture showed the stage in the auditorium, and then there was a recital stage as well. So there wasn't a specific area, but to me, the stage in the gym is the stage. The other one is just a little platform.
So maybe we just, under new stage and ramp, we just parentheses like in recital hall or something.
New recital stage. Yeah, that's how we differentiated from the very beginning. We called one recital and the other the main.
That's right. You're right.
I think it's pushing to a conclusion of the discussion we haven't had yet.
Well, I think it's got to be called out here, John, though, because it was both of those stages were part of the referendum, right? It's regardless of whether we agree that that's what we should do. In option 2, I think we need to include both.
Yeah, option 2, there's little discussion around scope of work because it's what's listed in the referendum, right? As opposed to option 1, we talked about what's in and out, program changes and stuff like that.
Correct.
Right, but the referendum does not call out a specific stage. It calls out the two stage locations.
Right, but a recital stage is not a theater. It's a very, and it did call for 145 seat theater. So
Right.
that's what I'm getting back to. That's one of the reasons why.
Prior conversation, which we said we would defer and have collectively later. This isn't the time or place to do that. I just want to make sure.
Well, I
that
think if we're presenting to the public, we need to be unified on what's going to be in these options. So I think this may be the place.
I think the agreement was that we had a bucket of funds for stage renovations that we could use as we decide we need to.
So what if for option 2, we just lumped them all together in $1 amount and avoided confusion? It doesn't change the total numbers and we're still going to have the conversation.
I'm fine with that.
I think it needs to be broken out because I think that they're two very different things, and I think it's going to be a point of contention. So I think we need to say this is what the stage in the main area would take. And if we talk about programming, that was one of the drivers for this community center was programming around theater and performance.
Completely agree.
So
I think we're not in agreement about how. And I'm perfectly fine with making it generic and having the discussion later. And when we reach concurrence, then we're ready to move on.
Do we have a consensus on that? Because I have a question regarding something else.
I'm fine either way. I don't.
I'm fine either way.
I'm good, Joe.
So, excuse me, Joe. So are we leaving those as 2 separate line items or are we combining those?
I don't remember what the
Option
referendum
2.
said.
Okay, so we'll have 2 separate lines. Okay.
I think you have to paint it as the referendum, and I don't recall what that said.
yeah, it's 125 seat theater is what the referendum language, the explanatory text said.
If the text kind of just referred to theater in general, then maybe we just put the funds together into theater renovations and we can draw a line item to say, look, the theater renovation funds go towards this line item in the referendum.
I'm okay either way.
Okay. Hey, not to interrupt, but Jeannie, I need to switch devices. Could you please? Oh, there you go. Never mind.
Can I ask a change topics for a second? I just need a point of clarification. So if this is the referendum, and I'm comparing just the new entry from option 1 to option 2, it's the same price. Isn't option 1 the de-scoped entry and option 2 should be the original ground level entry?
So they The adjustment in option one came as a negative 544,000, which reflects the new entry at the bottom. So that the upper ones, it basically credited.
Yeah, okay.
So that's where that shows up.
But why, okay, maybe I'm not following you. Why the line item costs the same 143? It's the same on both sheets, that's what I'm asking.
Where
I
are
understand
you
it should be
looking?
cheap. New entry storefront, 143.
Right, so that's going to be in both because the adjustment is done below on option one.
They both
Where is
assume the
that?
ground level, and then you get a credit back because you're doing the
Right.
less expensive one.
Right.
Okay, where's that? Okay, maybe this, I'm not seeing the credit on option one.
It's
Oh.
it's below, it's at the very bottom.
As long as it's in there.
It's right here, Joe.
Oh. Oh, Jesus, thank you very much.
The negative.
Let's move on.
No problem.
Thanks, guys.
I
So
don't
are
have
we
any
good
other-
with
So
option 2?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so
Ann,
as well.
anything you want to add? Okay, thank
Yep.
you, Ann.
Oh,
You're
I think
welcome.
it's good.
So I will
All right.
make a couple of those modifications to the wording then on those line items.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thanks, John.
Okay. And then option number 3 is similar to option number 2. However, this is, if you will, the all-in with the recommended changes for the building committee. And that essentially is, focusing on these items over here, which are now being taken out of option number 2. So the geothermal system, the Academy Street redesign, as we're going to word that now, the site upgrades in the patio scope, and then the new ball field. So those items are removed in the option number 3, and that in turn provides us with a revised construction figure of roughly $15,411,000.
John, quick question. Does this include at this point the movement of the playground to that patio area and the expansion of the parking lot? Or
Yes.
is that out?
That is in. That is right here, John. Paving of the parking lot
Okay,
line item, and then the new playground line item.
got it. Okay.
Hey, John, I just have one question. When you look at the alternate costs that you're showing there, they're different than what was on option 2. Is that because those are loaded numbers on the other
Correct.
column?
Yes.
Okay.
These numbers
just
here are including the markups, Dave.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Right. So I think maybe just for clarification, we want to note that. I don't know if all the other committee members were aware of that or not. So they don't line up. If you look at option 2, the costs that are included are not the same number that's excluded in option 3.
Because of the markups.
Because of the
Correct.
markups, correct.
Yep.
But the markups then has gone down here as well, correct? Yeah.
But again, that can be included with, the annotations that, explain why do we need a new playground? It's because of this item, the sanitary system.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, Ann.
Yeah. So then the questions become, are there anything in 3 that we would like to put in or take out?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if anyone disagrees with me, or maybe convince me otherwise, but I really like the site upgrades and the patio design. I think it really would add to the downtown. I understand it can be done at a later date. I don't know how everyone feels about that. I just really liked that design in the proposal, and I thought it made the area look quite nice.
Yeah, it's a significant cost though.
It is.
And is it
And
in
it's-
keeping with the defined scope of what we were supposed to be talking about?
Not really.
What do you mean by that? What would
Well,
the de facto scope be?
So basically, my understanding was that um, the scope, as far as we were concerned, is the building. And
Yeah, but
what is, the exterior envelope of the building and then everything inside the building.
yeah, but we creep beyond that, right? Because now we're talking about parking. We're talking about playscapes and stuff like that because of sanitary. So we wound up creeping past that.
Except the
And-
sanitary is required in order
Yep.
for us to be able to use the building. And if the
I get it.
sanitary is happening, then these other things have to happen.
No, I'm just,
Right.
yeah, I fully agree with you 100%. It's not necessary. I'm just throwing it out there as this is what we recommend.
So, and maybe a slightly different perspective, I think our remit is to create a community center and to accommodate all of the spaces that the community would utilize on that lot. And as a summary beach community, having outdoor spaces that people can commune feels within the remit of the community center. So I sort of see it in that bucket. That makes sense.
AJ, you said that so much better than I did. Thank you.
John, what is primarily driving the site upgrades and patio costs to be that high?
I can comment on that.
Sure.
Just the design. It's really nice. It could be similar but less expensive. It's all pavers. There's a lot of amenities in that site design. In fairness, it's the landscape architect run amok. That's not really totally fair, but it's a really nice design. I think there's probably a compromise.
See if I can pull that up.
Maybe there's a compromise.
There probably is a compromise position in there, but the only drawback is, today I couldn't tell you, what that would be or what it would cost. I would say is if this committee recommended doing something more than less than what's there, but more than the dirt minimum, then you might say, we recommend allocating an allowance for site design of, I don't know, say 350 instead of 760 or 400. You could do that. I mean, you certainly would get something done. It wouldn't be pavers. It might just be stamped concrete. There might not be any seating areas on the left there, but it would definitely, be funds to do something with, right? So
And I think too, Tom, I would be hesitant to try to reduce it at this point because we're not at that phase yet, right? For construction, we haven't had all our specs together, exactly what we're going to identify for the type of pavers, right?
sure. I mean, we could
You know.
always BE this going forward, but the point is are you going to carry some money for it or no money for it? That's all.
Yeah, I think that's where I was going, Tom. And if you're carrying money, we want to make sure we carry enough to do what we all believe should be done or needs to be done.
So what would we get exterior here without some additional funds for patio and upgrades? Is it just repaving the existing parking lot as it is today, or is it cleaning up the landscaping? What do we get absent of this additional 768?
I mean, it's difficult to say exactly, but you will get a sidewalk that goes from the south side of the site to the front entrance. And then you'll get a sidewalk that goes from the front entrance out to the parking area.
And that parking area all gets repaved.
Yep, and then you'll get some regrading and you'll get some new lawn areas in between the buildings.
Yeah, and just to say, for a point of, the parking lot is also upgraded in this scenario as well, right? To accommodate traffic.
That's correct.
So there was talk early on about traffic flow in and out of, for pickups and things like that. So they created that center island, which adds some trees, but also creates some directional flow in the
Right.
parking lot.
Right. So there's no way
In and
of getting right next to the building via a car right now, though. You have to walk through.
Oh, that's correct. You have to
Yes.
walk from the edge of the parking area
From here to
right there to the building. But, we're talking about 50, 60 feet, it's not like it's
Mhm.
not like it's significant physical challenge.
And that's the revised entry. That's not even the original entry, correct?
Well, this plan shows the revised entry, but the original entry, the vestibule is in the same place. You just don't
Same
have to
spot.
go up the steps.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking of a mom or dad with the kids in the rain. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's and or somebody who's elderly that needs to
Oh, yep.
get out.
Oh my God! Now we're now we're going over the edge.
Now we're adding a canopy.
Yeah,
Now,
we should stop
oh
talking.
my
right?
God, we're all gonna melt in the rain. God forbid we walk 50 feet from the
Not like
car
my
to the
dad,
building.
Tom.
Did I say that? I did, but I'm sorry. I won't say that to the Board of Selectmen.
And it was recorded, Tom.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
and
okay.
and there's people. We actually have public tonight,
And
guys.
public's
First
listening.
time in a while.
Turn off the lights when you leave the room.
All right, so I would assume the real cost here are these pavers. And maybe, you can still get some design with, like you said, the stamped concrete or something.
Yeah.
So,
Imagine the parking lot's not cheap either, with the
No.
island and stuff, the
No.
curbing.
Well, and you got all new
Well-
drainage too, Joe, and that's not cheap
Ooh.
with detention basins and stuff like that. There's a lot of requirements, as you know, with
Yeah, you're right.
discharging water.
You're absolutely right. And it is, you're looking at, what is that? 4 or
The-
5% of the total budget?
I mean, Joe, we
4 or 5% for
you could be looking at 150,000 just for like a hydro separator for drainage. I mean, those units aren't cheap.
Yeah. No.
so should we look at number 3 again and see what we're talking here?
Yeah, so that's where the 7, yeah, all that stuff is expensive. That's why it's 768. It's a big number.
But the paving of the parking lot,
paving
does
of the
that
parking lot is
include,
a separate.
right,
yeah,
and
that's
that
this
includes
line
the
item.
drainage there, correct?
Well, I mean, it's got drainage. It's draining somewhere now, so it's probably just reusing what's there and ripping up or resurfacing.
I mean, the one thing we were looking at, Joe, is having, originally we were paving the street and the parking that exists now in front of the building. I believe we had taken that out. Is that right, John? Those costs?
Yes. This area here was excluded.
Okay, that makes sense because we had discussed that, and that maybe is a town project since it's a town road, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, so the paving scope is strictly limited to this area here.
Got it.
Just to make sure I understand, the plant beds and the planting are part of that 270 or part of the 768 in the parking lot?
768.
No,
Okay.
in the parking lot?
Yeah, that parking lot, well, maybe John could comment. My impression is the parking lot shown right now is renovated with the planting beds, everything else. The part of the 270 is just simply redoing what's there now. You're not getting anything other than what's there now, which is just a blank.
No, the
No.
paving, I think the paving is this
Paving
area
is
here.
this. Yes, this is the
Okay.
270. This
So
Does it
you're-
include
with-
the trees?
with the island and everything?
with the island, correct.
Okay,
And I
And the
belie-
trees?
And I believe, going back to the quote,
okay.
the exterior improvements, I believe that is where those trees are,
Oh.
carried, is in that line item there.
Oh, boy, okay. Then that's nice.
So Joan, to your earlier point, it looks like a good chunk of the 768 is probably tied up in the paver surfaces.
Yeah, maybe that can get maybe that can get done later.
Or we look at different materials for,
I was gonna say, there's probably some
cost.
significant value engineering that can be done there, and we could
Yeah.
still provide something to the community that,
Yeah, concrete or something.
John,
Mhm.
how about the small seating areas? Are those part of the
These are-
768?
Yes, this would be essentially everything that's sort of, shaded, if you will, John, is what is incorporated into that 768 figure. So you've got, the new patio, you have the seating here, you have, some wall lighting that's called out, a concrete seat wall with the bench mount. There's some, specific details. There's a festoon lighting that's called out here.
Mhm.
I
Drainage
think it
strip.
might be
concrete-
nice to have those outdoor seating areas, whether it's paved or pavers. And I can't imagine that would be a very expensive addition to the existing or the paved walkway.
And I think,
maybe we just carry a budget. I like Tom's idea.
and we still need some kind of was it the walkway up top, right? We still need to do something with that walkway. It doesn't need to be pavers, but from the parking lot to the entrance, you still need some kind of,
Right, you would still have a sidewalk essentially coming from your parking lot to
Oh.
your entrance. And then you'd also have a sidewalk coming from your entry point south down to, the sidewalk here, that intersection. So you'd
Right.
have an L, you'd have a dog leg created, with two sidewalks. One from here, from the parking lot, and then one from the entry down to the sidewalk intersection here.
Got it.
I
Sorry.
wonder what the material cost difference would be between concrete and the pavers.
Well, the concrete would be much, much cheaper because, not only material wise, but also your labor's not as involved with
Yeah,
a concrete sidewalk versus a paver system.
So would it be 50%?
I'm not going to be quoted on that end, but
No, I just,
I'm not the estimator, but
I like
mean,
the
if-
tone in Ann's voice when she said that.
so, I mean, if we're moving towards the idea of, tonight, maybe we can agree on an allowance value.
Yeah.
What is a reasonable number to consider?
Yeah, I was wondering if someone had that price per square foot in their back pocket. And they could just
Listen,
quickly do
there's a
that.
lot of stuff in here that factors into
that
the
number.
site design. It's not
Right.
just the pavers. The pavers are very expensive, but the pavers are like $30 a square foot versus $10 a square foot for concrete. But there's also the benches, the decorative lighting, the patterning, it all adds up. The extra walkways that are connecting all the buildings, the walkway from the parking lot to Academy Street. So, if you want to, I guess it's hard to say, but if you wanted to take half the money, obviously we could get a good chunk of work done for half the money, more than none, and it would be fantastic. The committee also has to realize that by the time we actually go to construction documentation and bidding, we're going to go through a whole nother value engineering phase that's more detailed, and we're going to have to look at things and get the best out of each improvement. So for now, if you want to allocate some funds for doing the work, I would say allocate half, allocate 375 or 400,000. We can get a lot done for 400,000, and it's a heck of a lot more than the base scope, and we'll work within that budget.
Yeah, I was.
Tom, the only thing I would add for this, and probably a question for all the committee members, our goal here is to exclude or include scope
We lost you, Dave.
You're breaking up,
Correct.
Dave.
and or costs. Oh, sorry, you there? Can you hear me?
We missed what you said, Dave.
Can you hear me now though, Joe?
Yes.
That's better.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm now traveling. Sorry. No, so for the committee, I guess I have a question. So we're trying to identify scope or items that we're going to recommend or take out, correct?
Correct.
And not necessarily the dollar amount. Is that, do you guys agree with that?
No, I think we have to include the associated dollar amount with anything we recommend.
Right.
Because
Okay, so so if we're recommending the patio furnishings, I agree with Ann said we should just come up with a number, right? An allowance number that we all feel comfortable with. Does that make sense?
I could get on board with that. I would do what Tom recommended, 375 or 400. So I like the way AJ put it, it is, the external spaces are important for the community as well, especially as we try to tie in from the beach to the town, and it's sort of the central spot. So I see it as an integral part of the green, the town, and making it more vibrant downtown.
I'm a little more hesitant to cut the budget that much, just because the town just spent a ton of money to redo all the pavers downtown, and if we don't carry any of that design through here, that would be a bit of a miss. I would think. I don't think we need to necessarily go full bore, but I'd like to at least try to incorporate some of those design elements from what they've done downtown through to the community center, so we have some continuity to the look and feel.
Right, but the downtown's not completed. It stops at Cumberland Farms. It doesn't go any further. The walkways, all of that ends on the north and south side, right around the firehouse. There's a whole third of the downtown area was not included in the pavers and that kind of stuff.
It's my understanding that's part of the plan, though.
Yes, that is the plan, and I believe the funding is almost in place at this point. So I think if the committee's asking, we should assume that the downtown beautification project will extend all the way to Route 79.
So, I mean, if we have a town look and feel, like, I think we should do our best to incorporate some of that. I think there's plenty of opportunity for VE though, and I would tend more towards probably the 500 side than the 350 side, to give us room to do that. But
and I think AJ, to your point, and Joan, you have much more experience than I do and many others, I think, on the board. But this is like a one-time. We have one shot to give this to the selectmen, right? With our recommendations and what the cost would be. Is that fair? So we're not going to be able to go back later and say, hey, we're short $200,000 because we need more for landscaping. So I don't really think we want to shortchange ourselves in what we're recommending either.
Right. Do
you agree with that, Joan?
I agree with it. The question then becomes the dollar figure that's going to be expended, and to make sure that everybody feels comfortable that this is the right way to go. We're all in agreement that this is something that we think is needed, and we move forward and say, this is what we're recommending, guys. And the Board of Selectmen could come back and say, something, we can do this in another way, with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance agreeing, then that the number may come down, but it will be done via another funding capability. Could go into
That's-
CIP, or
That's their
but that's something
prerogative,
that the Board of
right?
Selectmen, that's their call, right?
But I
Yeah,
don't think
because-
it's sway our decision, should it? I mean, we should decide what we
No.
think is right, right?
Right.
Okay.
We're saying this is what we believe the community center should be. And I think the public is looking at us to say, okay, we don't want to spend over 5 million more. What is it that we can get to that's a good number? And to justify that number.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all saying we want to do something outside, but we're talking about maybe $100,000 or $200,000 in difference of opinion here.
Mm. Yeah, I think the
And I think
768
it's a
is
little
a big
arbitrary.
number.
Yeah.
Right.
768 is a little hard to swallow for me for it, but
Yeah.
400 or 500, it's just, but again, that's just arbitrary. I don't have the numbers.
It is. That's the problem, right? We don't have a design that says for 300 you get this, for 500 you get this, for 700 you get this, and that does make it hard to make a decision.
Well,
But that's
because
why we're
along
getting paid the big
way-
bucks.
Well, because once we go, before, when we get to construction phase, we may have some value engineering we're gonna have to do. So
Yep.
we're may have to make some choices at that point.
Mhm.
That's exactly when we're going to be making much more
Right.
difficult decisions.
So, I mean, if we think it's gonna be easy, that it's this much money, and we're gonna be able to build and do exactly what's on the paper, that may not be true, so. We have some tough choices in the future, but hopefully not too many.
Yeah, I mean, you could. So do we go forward with the
can we-
768 or do we go forward with 5?
I would
I mean,
agree
not
with
knowing,
Nate.
Joe, what we're gonna get for 500, I'm not sure how much you'd want to
If I can interject, I think going forward with $500,000 would be a responsible way to say to the Board of Selectmen, hey, we're reducing some of the scope in the site work. We will get plenty done for $500,000. We may not have pavers, it may be concrete, we may not have all of the decorative overhead lighting, but you'll get the outdoor activity space and the program functions. I think that would accomplish multiple things at once.
And I would agree with Joe that the exterior pieces of this to have some additional functionality, the seating areas, and make it a place where people are interested in lingering and staying. I think those are important, but I would agree cutting it back. And AJ, I like the suggestion for 500.
I'm on board with that.
I am too.
I am too.
think we're all good with the 500.
Now, just for my math and clarification, is the 500 to incorporate the markups? Or is that before the markup costs,
Incorporating the markups.
including the markups? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to be sure.
How much money do they want to make on this thing, huh?
Okay.
Oh.
Are there any deletions that we can see? Throwing that out there, guys.
At what point do the contingencies start to be pulled back in or reduced? Is it when the design bids are?
Are you talking the design and pricing contingency, John?
Yeah, because we still have over 2,600,000 in contingencies or markups.
Well, the design and pricing contingency, that'll go down to 0 once the CD, the construction document phase is completed. So this line item is to carry any costs that are associated.
Undocumented scopes of work, essentially. It's an
Right.
estimating contingency, John. That
For
again, as
detailing.
John said, will go away as you finalize the documents. It gets transferred up, by the way, above.
Yes, it
gets transferred into
essentially
the-
goes up and into these
Right.
lines above.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's margin of error.
Mhm.
Correct. So I
Looks
mean,
like we've
this
got
doesn't
it.
go away. It goes down to zero, but for the most part, this number gets, distributed between these line items above as those drawings and details become more refined.
So it's covering the unknown.
Correct.
Correct.
And then the general conditions and the profit fees, those two are 1.5 million. What are we talking of those? What do those?
Those
Entail.
are percentages assumed by the contractor. Those are numbers that are carried to compensate your contractor's markups and profit, et cetera,
So
when it
looks
goes out to
like we
bid.
have about 800,000 in soft fees that are tied to contingencies that, if they aren't consumed, would go back up into covering the budget.
Explain that again, John. I'm sorry.
We've got the 5% design and pricing contingency and the GC contingency, both of which are soft costs, because they're there to cover things we don't know yet.
But I think is it GC
G-
conditions, is that, that's their profit, no, or no?
Well, because we've got general conditions and then we have a profit and fee that are identical, and I'm just trying to figure out what those two mean. Why?
Here, Joan, the general conditions here, let me start from the top to the bottom.
Okay.
Design and pricing contingencies, the estimated contingencies for the unknown scope that will eventually transfer to the scopes above.
Up above.
Mhm.
GC contingency is a number that the contractor carries for the stuff that he misses during the bidding process to cover things that are in the documents that maybe he or she or their subcontractors might have missed to cover themselves. The general conditions is the cost of the contractor to have field staff, the superintendent, the project manager, the project engineer, the trailer, and all of the inner, services that the contractor would need to execute the work. And then the profit and fee is exactly what that is. It's the profit and fee. Whether it's 6 and 6 or 8 and 4, it's about 12% of the trade cost is what that's carried for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So my point was the only soft costs in here are the two contingencies that probably would float up into the other section.
Just the one, John. Just that
this one.
design and pricing. The GC contingency will stay within the GC bid.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
By the way, if those numbers obviously change, that number changes because it's a percent driven value.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
So I did have a couple of things that I wanted to get Tom's opinion on, if that's all right. The drop ceilings versus drywall ceilings. Some of these were minor items, but are there advantages for us to switch back to drywall ceilings?
No, I think that was a good decision and you should stay with the suspended ceilings.
Okay. And what about the plastic piping change?
We typically end up with the plastic piping in today's industry anyways, so I would stay with the plastic piping, the PVC.
Okay.
You mentioned the decision for all electric, and there's some question whether that's really the right decision. Would it have an impact on the budget if we were to go with, let's say, gas for the kitchen, or whatever other decisions we need to make?
Well, if you bring gas to the building, then you might as well consider using gas to heat and cool. But we went all electric because the VRF systems are very efficient. Felicia may disagree. The equipment is expensive and, requires replacement maintenance. So there are long-term costs associated with it. But it is comparable in performance to the geothermal system. And that's why we went with that. It also gives you a lot of flexibility as to where you provide as to how you split up the heating and cooling for the building. So it's not a simple yes, no, there's no cost or there is cost. Gas systems are, can be efficient and they're tried and true, but I think
The areas.
Do we
that
want to,
Were the kitchen, and we had talked about a kiln for ceramic work. And if we make the decision to
Right.
go electric, I'm not sure what the options are for cooking and for ceramic kiln.
I think most of the kilns are electric now anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
did we want to bring Felicia and Bill in for this discussion? No, because that'll just make, we could, but it's a technical discussion that really wasn't on the agenda and it
Yeah,
should.
my only question was, does it affect the budget if we were to
Right.
make the decision when we get to the details?
Felicia does have her hand up, so I don't know if.
Hi, y'all. So I don't think we should get into the sort of details of it. Peter is also on this call, Peter Anderson, who knows far more about the systems. But I would venture to say, yes, it does have cost implications that need to be worked through and vetted before the decision is made. And that's all that the facilities department is asking for an opportunity to do further.
Capital cost and or operating cost?
Both.
Both.
Significant operating costs we do foresee in the future.
Yeah, I would imagine. Also wonder too, we're gonna, in option 3, we're talking about building out the kitchen, is that correct?
Yeah, I think
Correct.
so.
And we were gonna, so we're
Correct.
gonna build a commercial kitchen without gas?
I mean, that's a thing now, but I didn't. That would be a choice we have to make, right?
well, from a safety stamp, I mean, there's some induction ranges, there's some pretty good electric out there. It's
Yeah,
not,
Yeah, my only concern is that cooking classes, typically you would want to have something that people could reproduce at home. And things like electric or induction are less typical, but again, details we can worry about later.
I guess I'm in the minority with the electric. We don't have gas up north at all, so there's really not a lot of gas stoves unless
Got
they're
propane.
propane.
I think everyone on my block's got
I know,
propane.
I want to move to it soon. Okay.
So is there a dramatic change in mechanicals and stuff if you move away from all electric? Like what could potentially be a percentage delta or a dollar delta there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The infrastructure is different. The equipment is
Yeah.
less expensive, but now we have to bring in all the gas piping, pipe it throughout the building. It's probably similar.
Yeah.
Although the long-term maintenance requirements may be less. But the state is also moving away from moving towards legislation that doesn't allow natural gas for cooking for commercial kitchens anymore because of the off-gassing and the environmental concerns. A number of other states have already moved away from it. So while it's not in play just yet, it could be in play in the next code cycle.
Okay.
So if it sounds like if it's almost a wash, then it's a technical discussion, not a budget discussion.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of
Leave
budget
it.
allocated to get the building heated and cooled. I think we'll work through that with Felicia and the facilities department in the CD phase of the project.
So do we have consensus on this, on option 3 then?
The last thing I will
Okay.
bring up, just because I want to make sure we're on the same page on it. There was a discussion, we switched away from a curtain wall to a different kind of wall at some point. I wanted to make sure that that's still the right direction, because I think there was a cost implication of making that switch.
There was a cost implication, and again, that's something we can explore in the DD phase. I think we have enough funding in place to account for it. It's just the front entrance wall, that's it. So, I would not reevaluate that at this time.
Okay.
And now, to clarify, AJ, that was the difference between the storefront and a curtain wall, I believe, is what
Okay.
you were
Yes, yeah. Thank
referencing.
you.
Okay,
So has the storefront, correct?
that is correct. This line item here.
Right, okay. So, and I just want to be clear that everybody's on the meeting, that the penthouse needs to be completely out of any option, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, because that
Because
requires a fire
it
pump.
would-
That was going to require, correct, that was going to require a fire pump.
Right, so it was just, it doesn't make any sense to keep the penthouse. I just want people to understand that, because that was gonna be an exorbitant amount of money. And we're leaving them out of both of those options, but I think that should be noted in the PowerPoint presentation.
Agreed.
Now, these Academy Street upgrades that we're taking out, can you refresh my memory on those?
That's the window wall that was gonna have to demo part of the Academy Street side, and you were gonna be able to see through the building, so to speak. So where we have the storefront on one end, on the Academy side, there would
Right.
also be a wall of glass.
And
That's
we-
what, and I think that's,
Yes, that's what that's referring to.
And we still are aligned that that's not a valuable 130,000 to spend if the funds are available to do it. Like, that's not a part of the project you're gonna add later, right? So
Correct.
I'm bringing it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's now or
It's
it's
now or
never.
never.
Yeah.
I'm not as, because of the way the Academy Street side is, I think it's appropriate not to have it up, to do that upgrade. And I think that we could, I mean, I think it's still, you're gonna have a ton of light coming in from the ceiling now with the, you know, with the clustery back in there. And I also think, once again, you're tearing an exterior wall and you're cutting into a wall that wasn't going to be touched, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. And I think that into itself had some thought process as far as the unknowns. I don't know how else to say that. Structurally unknowns.
I believe
Also-
there's no functional benefit to putting that back in the project. It really was more of an aesthetic thing. There are still windows on that side of the building.
And I actually kind of like the historical footprint of the front facade. When people drive by the history of the Academy building, it still has the same front face.
Yeah, that's not going to change the front face. This
Yeah,
was
we are-
the
we
Academy
are-
side.
This is the
We
east.
are replacing
east
all the windows
elevation.
anyhow, so there will be new windows over
Right.
Were we doing some siding work there anyway, because the brick on the gym and the brick on the original building are different. And part of what I liked about at least that one element of that design is that by putting a different kind of siding in between them, your eye doesn't catch that jarring change as easily. And I thought that maybe we had just VE'd to a different type of siding there, but
I don't recall discussing siding. I thought we were just repointing it.
so this would just be repointing it and leaving it as is.
Agree, yes.
Correct.
We had looked at a couple different options, including re-siding it. It just, at the end of the day, it really doesn't make financial sense. It's a want, it's not a need. And I have a hard time justifying it to the community.
When you say siding, you meant re-siding the entire gym, right? Or you're
No,
talking
we
about
looked
siding
at-
just the
We
structure?
looked at siding the portion that we were gonna turn into a glass wall. So
Got it.
the piece of wall, the interstitial addition.
Right.
Listen, this is the architect saying, hey, let's not spend money on something that looks good, all right? So I think you know where we should probably go with this one.
It's fair.
So where did we land? Just adding $500,000 back in? And that was it?
That's all I heard.
That's the only note I have.
Yeah,
And I guess for the group, there was nothing that any recommendations to remove anything that was already included, correct? Because we kind of talked about this last week.
I don't
There
think
were
so.
some VE things that we're leaving in, so we're not taking anything off of this list, but there are some value engineering things off of the original design that are already incorporated into it.
Like the
Yes, I think that,
penthouse.
Right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and remember, option 3 is what we're recommending, so that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So if we just make that one change to put 500,000 back in, then John, what are we looking at? Like a $1.5 million difference? Is that right?
no, 3.7.
Well,
You're
'cause it's
already
not
at 3.2.
Sorry, because it's not loaded. Right. Never mind.
But if you're saying the
3.8.
500 is including markups, then you're essentially adding, 500,000 to this number
Oh, that's
Right.
right, because we agreed on 500,000 with the
with the
markups.
markups.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Understood.
Yeah, so it's
So we're
Yes.
talking
3.73.
3.7.
Yep, should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
3.73.
Okay.
John, you had sent a list of value engineering options, and one of them was regarding the kitchen and the fit out and commercial kitchen equipment at 116. have we-
That's not part of construction.
That's a soft cost. That's
So
an FF&E line item, John,
Okay, that's all outside? Okay,
outside of these numbers, if that's what you're asking.
yeah, because I thought it may
Yes.
include the venting and some of the other things that are construction related costs, but you're saying it's all the equipment costs in that 116.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
Got
and that list was from an August 8th, 2023 building committee meeting is when that was generated.
so venting, fire suppression, all would be the same, whether it's commercial or residential equipment. This is just, the 116 is just equipment related.
Correct.
Right.
What is your comment about commercial and residential? I was
The fire suppression system. Yeah.
No, actually the equipment itself, because the primary thing that the town was looking for was cooking lessons. That was very high in the list of things. But having commercial cooking equipment to be able to do rented out to third parties for commercial use, or those things were relatively low on the town needs and wants. But if it's all related to equipment, it's a discussion for later.
Yeah,
I just
okay.
was wondering if it altered any of the construction related work that would go on in the kitchen area.
I mean, not significantly, John, and to be honest, that's probably one of those line items that comes into play with that design and pricing contingency figure. You know, that gets worked out as you get into the CD documentation.
And I don't have an opinion one way or the other which direction we go with it. I just think it's another discussion we need to have about what do we want that kitchen really to be.
So John, another thing that maybe this is already in your head for the presentation that you're putting together, but should we map out like what the cost will be to the town for these different options, or provide some clarity there on what this looks like from a town budget perspective?
From a higher level perspective, AJ, are we addressing the fact that the grant money is actually reducing the town burden in any of this discussion?
Yes, that's going to be part of the discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be part of the public information sessions to show.
This is going to go to referendum if the Board of Selectmen is in alignment with this. That's my understanding. Is this the order? That's the order of operations.
So it would be an increase in the expenditures, but a reduction in the bond. So that's the piece. So we're not bonding as much. So it's going to cost the taxpayers less money because of the grants. So we initially got approved for 15.9 million in bonds, and that will be reduced to less money, and the expenditure of the building will be higher. That's the concept. Is Al still on?
Yeah, you're right, Joan. The price of the building is going up, but the cost to the taxpayers potentially going down. Ultimately, the public is going to decide this, not this committee, not the selectmen. It's eventually going to be decided by the public.
Yep.
Yeah, Joan, the one item of note I would say is with the change that we just made, we are over, what is our number now? 3.7 million?
3.7.
So if we were to reduce the site work back to 400, say, thousand, then we would be under that 3.6 million that we received in the grant. That we just
probably
received.
A good idea.
Right. It just to show, you know, if that makes sense to the group.
That does make sense. That's a good catch, Dave.
The new grant was 3.6.
Yeah.
3.65.
Yeah. So I think if we agreed on 500,000, AJ, but if we go to 400,000, that'll put us below that 3.6 million.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, can I raise something? This is Mark.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I want to correct something that we looked at, and it's going to help. So there was the GC contingency line item that was shown. That contingency is really for CM deliveries, not GC deliveries. So I think when we're looking at the numbers that we should take that, unless somebody specifically asked for that, I think we should take that $190,000 out, because in a GC, and I was misreported what I was saying. That's really a CM contingency, not a GC. So in a GC delivery, you wouldn't have that. That's really only for CM delivery. So I suggested to John we take that out. So that'll lower the number by the $193,000.
Okay, so it'll help offset that 500.
Yes.
Okay. So a question for you though, while we're on that subject, just really quick, Mark. So do we have a mobilization item in here somewhere then for the GC?
Yeah, that's in the general
That's
conditions.
in the general conditions.
Okay, so that's like his mobilization, his site
anything
setup.
related
Okay.
to the contractor getting out there, doing the work, the site fencing,
Yeah.
trailer, all that's baked into that general conditions.
Got it. In design bid build, you wouldn't have the errors and omissions item, which would be the
wouldn't have
contingency.
you wouldn't have the GC contingency. That's I was thinking
That's what-
CMs, that this was going to be a CM delivery, but if it's a GC,
GC.
you wouldn't have that number. So that number comes out.
Okay. All right, so that's helpful.
Yep.
So would you, do you
So
want
then we keep
the,
the 500 in?
yeah, so do you want the number back to 500 then? Because that would be covered by that deletion.
Yeah, I think that makes
Then
sense.
some.
If the group agrees,
it's-
yeah,
And we're still
be-
under. It's almost like adding 300 to it versus the 500. Yeah.
I'm on board with that.
Okay.
yeah, if we get
So-
under the 3.6 would be good around there.
So yeah, that would be. Okay.
All right, we all good
on-
then with that?
So we're on general consensus.
Sounds good.
That we're putting back in the 500, we're taking out the 193. We're still gonna be under the 3.6 as an add. As what we're recommending thus far.
How does that 193 coming out impact our option one, John? Does that mean that some of those partially excluded costs would go back in to potentially provide some programming?
Good point.
Yes, because that line item is in options 1 and, well, in all 3 options. So taking that out, we would end up putting, being able to add some additional costs to the lines above. Yes.
That's
Okay.
great.
So you can make those adjustments, John?
Yes, I'll make those adjustments accordingly.
And then you guys plan on putting together the PowerPoints and the bullets and any sort of schematics or
Yeah, and we'll have imagery. We'll have everything, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what's your plan on getting that done, Mark?
We'll have it done next week because the
Okay.
meeting is in. It will move to April something.
April 3rd.
April
Just
3rd, did you say at
2
noon?
weeks 2 weeks from today, right?
Yeah, so we'll have a draft done by next week, and I'm sure is Joe back next week?
He's only off this week, Mark.
Okay, so we'll work with Joe and Al and anybody else and have drafts reviewed before the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
It would be nice for the whole team to get the draft prior to.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that if there's anything that we
Definitely,
could
Joe.
catch.
Definitely, Joe. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a small
Great.
point. Is that April 3rd meeting? Do we know if it's evening or afternoon?
7 p.m.
7 o'clock.
It is. Excellent. Thank you.
I'll be
All right.
zooming in for that one too.
Yeah, probably.
All right, we moving on the agenda. Are we good?
We are good.
All right, I guess we're moving on to public comment. Do we have any public with any comments?
Someone
If you would like, please raise your hand. Okay, and if you could say your name for the record when you're introducing yourself.
Go ahead, Jim.
He's still muted, it looks like.
All right, does that work?
Yes.
Okay. So a few questions for you. When was the last time
Could
there
you say
was,
your
an
name, full name,
evaluation?
please?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Jim Schmaltz. And when was the last time there was an evaluation done on the building structure and roof and things like that? Oop, can you hear me?
That was,
Yeah, we
yes.
can. We're looking to our construction folks, I think.
Yep.
That evaluation was done in the fall of last year, so August. The building has experienced a little bit of deterioration, but the windows were boarded up in order to prevent water infiltration, and we believe at this point the building is stabilized. But letting it go significantly greater period of time could risk further deterioration of the building.
Okay. And the pricing, does that include, does it need new roofing, or is there an estimate on the life of the roof at this point?
Yes, sir. The building, Tom Arcari, by the way, architect, the building would get an entire envelope upgrade, a new roof, completely new roof with a 30-year lifespan, new windows. All of the masonry would be repointed and restored. So the first task in the priority list is, upgrading the building envelope.
Okay. And the estimates that you guys are working off of, are they based on taking all that into consideration?
Yes, so we prepared fairly detailed design documents, all the way through what's called the design development phase. And we had 2 independent cost estimators prepare independent line item cost estimates. And we used those to reconcile the scope with the cost. So both the, so the costs that we have are not only significantly inclusive of all the scope that has to be done, but they have double checked they've checked each other to make sure that the cost estimates reflect current market cost conditions.
Okay. And it seems like on a lot of the stuff you're still trying to figure out, so like if it's a commercial kitchen and the theaters, gym, when we come up with these numbers, are these going to be actual estimated bid numbers? Are we, the impression I get from the referendum text, you deliver a building to us, the commercial kitchen's in there, the plates, the spoons, everything in soup to nuts throughout the building. If, let's say, this project never began, anything that this causes, whether it's the baseball fields, septic, that should all be put into the number that the public is given when it goes to referendum. That's what, we were told we were going to have. It was geothermal, it was solar. I understand with the geothermal and the new system, there's some things like that, but we want to be able to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. If we're not going to have, a gym and locker rooms and, theater seats are still, 50 years old, they're not upgraded. All of these things, is that the number that you're going to be presenting? I understand you're going to also do a scale back number, but you need to come in and say, here's what we had for 15.9, what to produce that, soup to nuts. So there's no other hidden expenses going into town budgets. People need to kind of know. Also, I think you need to kind of reevaluate the staffing and ongoing cost of the buildings, along with making sure facilities, approves the system so that there's the consistency throughout the different buildings in town as far as a maintenance standpoint.
Right, and that's all going to be worked on between, we have 3 options that are going to be presented to the Board of Selectmen, which is, okay, this is what you get for 15.9, which is not a lot. This is what you get if we did everything, and this is the recommended. I don't know when you came into the thing, but there were 3 options that we discussed tonight, and those are the 3 options that will be presented to the Board of Selectmen, and also to the public, so that there's an understanding of. And
no, the public also needs to know, like, if there's other dollars that the town has to spend outside of what you're putting there, you need to have that noted. So there's not a CIP allotment for a septic system. It's not needed unless the academy's done. So that number needs to fall under the academy, or at least be noted as such. If you're going to,
it's in there.
and if you do the geothermal and the playgrounds and, everything the way that it should be.
Those are all the numbers that Yeah,
Those are
those are all
in
the
there.
numbers that we went through tonight.
But now, like, you're also talking like, okay, so we're talking about $100,000 to fit out a commercial kitchen, which, I don't think that that's anywhere near realistic. Are you going to actually have, that estimated in bid? Rather, you can't really, not an allowance. An allowance is a number you make up in a dream. A bid and an estimate are, is what you need to present. You can't put these things in and say like, oh, well, the commercial kitchen's now 250 or 300, which is what it's going to be. And then when you have to, add the, all the utility, utility connections, as well as, like I said, right down to, the cooking equipment that they're going to need, knives, forks, spoons, the furniture in the building, the gym floors, was what, $500,000 to redo the town gym. We want to make sure that we're getting a total realistic number.
Yes, and that number, so we start
And
off with
that's what
schematic.
we've been working on for 18 months.
Yeah, we start off with schematic design, which is a ballpark number. We're in design development now, which brings us a lot closer. As Tom mentioned, we get those estimators. We look at the budgets, we put numbers that are a little bit more final, and that's where we are now. And then we'll get to the point where we do construction design, and that's to create the documents to bid everything out and actually get those final numbers. That should be very, very close to the budgets that we discussed today. The key is to do it all within a certain amount of time. This way you don't wind up where we were with 3 years passing and escalation costs going up. So we are in step 2, and our numbers are pretty solid. And when we get to construction design and construction documents, they'll be even more solid, and they should be less. There really shouldn't be any major surprises from where we are today. That's just a normal construction bidding process. But we can't get to that next step without the public looking at these options and figuring out what they want and what we're willing to pay for.
Well, okay, so we're still not going to have a solid number when it goes to referendum.
I think we have 2 independent estimators. So I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but the numbers are pretty solid at this point. They'll get more solid as we get construction design and bid out. We'll get the final numbers, but we have 2 independent estimators that looked at it, used general current construction standards and costs for our area. And we're as accurate as we can be at this point in time.
Now, are there going to be allowances, or are you going to have estimates on everything?
At this time, we have estimates on everything, and we have 2 allowances. One allowance we're proposing for site work improvements, a reduction in the estimated amount for that, and one allowance to provide a full upgrade to the performing arts stages of the project. The rest of the costs are spot on and reflect very strong representations of the cost of the proposed scope of work.
So are like the, refinishing the gym floors, redoing the locker rooms, redoing a full kitchen, fit out, what all of those things will be estimated or allowances?
Those are all estimated, and they are in the projected cost right now.
And so if we get a copy of the estimate, it'll have, XYZ equipment, all of that in there, or is it just commercial kitchen at X dollars a square foot?
No, we have a specification for the equipment that's in the space. And I suspect that that information is considered public information. And if you work with the building committee, you can get access to that.
Yeah, I sent an email in the past and never received them.
One of the things.
I think we lost you,
Okay,
Joe.
well, we can try to
No,
get
I'm here.
those up on the town website. We can work with.
And
Sorry.
is solar going to be in
So
there, or is
one of
that
the things we're
been
trying to push
removed?
is, I don't remember solar being part of the,
Don't believe solar
Original
was part of the
scope, but-
referendum.
It was in the text. The town just put the referendum text back up on the website.
If I can add to that, to clarify, the plan is to incorporate solar in the project. There is no current budget to purchase the solar system. The proposed system does have infrastructure to allow the connection to it, and we anticipate it being applied in a power purchase arrangement as opposed to a direct purchase arrangement. Further details and design options for the solar system would happen during the construction documentation phase.
So so those numbers won't be included in the referendum?
The numbers don't need to be included in a part of the referendum because in a power purchase agreement, there's no capital expenditure costs other than the infrastructure improvements, which are a part of the estimate. If the town decided that it makes more sense to purchase the entire array, then that's something that would have to be addressed as another capital expenditure.
What has the town typically done?
so if we could. The comments to about to ask a question. And we don't have the answer to that in what the town has typically done at this point. We're focusing on
Okay,
this.
and
Thanks.
the bid is met up to all the facilities standards?
So
I believe that's what Tom is working
What was
with
the question?
facility department on.
What was that last question?
With the facilities, they had wanted all of the consistency throughout the systems of the town. Was that done in these numbers?
I believe so.
There are other people with
Is
their
that-
hands raised, Joan.
Is that something we
Yeah,
can clarify?
so- I can clarify, we've had meetings with town facilities staff. We coordinated and informed them what's in the current design. There was some debate whether or not the heating cooling system should be a gas system versus a VRF system. But the current system as designed is more expensive than the potential alternate system. We are meeting directly with facilities staff and we'll have the project meet their requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, you're up.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much. Matt Gordon, 34 Lenore Drive. Also a Board of Finance member. I have two questions. It won't take long. The first one has the committee considered what the annual cost will be for the town? Because we're talking a lot about the cost of the building, but for annual budgets, this is going to add to it. Do we have a sense of how much we're going to be adding to the town's operating budget each year?
That's not under our purview.
Okay.
From a just like the building committee for the new school doesn't look at that either. That's unfortunately that's your guys. It's your job.
Yeah, I think the public's going to want to be aware of what the annual cost is going to be. Okay, thanks. A second question is on the spreadsheet that you put up earlier, there was a CT education expense. What is that?
That is a portion of the building permit fee that cannot be waived by the town. In most communities throughout the state of Connecticut, when you're doing a project for your own community, the building permits are either waived or reduced, but the Connecticut Education Fund is a portion of that building permit fee that cannot be eliminated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Anyone else in the public? We've got so many here. It's the first for us.
You're good.
Good. Okay, well. Who's
Epson
our,
Committee.
Dave, is he, can you hear?
Yeah,
us?
I'm right here, Joan. All
Cool.
right. So with nothing else said, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank
All right.
you guys.
Thank
Thanks
you very
all.
much.
Good conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Yeah,
Good
take
job.
care.